hardly any. You've got to embed in your brain that hypertension is a silent killer. You've got even mild hypertension. Even mild hypertension is kind of like smoking. Even one cigarette a day is not good. You know, it's the same scenario. Mild hypertension, the mild. If the blood pressure stays consistently 140/92, that's mild hypertension. That will cause problems. That will cause problems. Mild hypertension. People have a hard time understanding that. They really, 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 really do. Have a hard time. I mean, the general, but they have a hard time understanding. Oh, my blood pressure ain't too bad. It's up a little bit, but it's okay. Hell no, it's not okay. That's all you got to say. It's not okay. I mean, it's going to take its toll. It will cause a problem. You know, it really will. So there's that cardiac procardia. That just gives you an idea. Now I want to emphasize this to you. Cardiac output. Now you need to kind of know this. This is on your practice exams. Cardiac output is the amount of blood ejected by the left ventricle into the aorta per minute. Now here you need to know how you figure cardiac output. Now you can say left and you can put in parentheses or right ventricle. Left or right ventricle. The amount of blood ejected by the left ventricle into the aorta per minute. Okay. Now cardiac output is stroke volume. Stroke volume is this, y'all. Each time it does this, that's stroke volume. Time beats per minute. That's how you figure cardiac output. Stroke volume, time beats per minute. That is it. Now, these various nuclear stress tests, y'all, will show the stroke volume. Well, will show the cardiac output. It will show the cardiac output. There's always, now listen carefully right here, y'all. There is always a little blood, some blood left in the ventricle after systole. You follow me? There's always blood. The blood that comes out is called the ejection fraction also. The cardiac output, you can also put in the term ejection fraction. The amount of blood ejected from that ventricle can also be termed cardiac output, can be related to ejection fraction, which you want your ejection fraction, and yours is all right. Y'all are okay. Mine's fine. In fact, Leachman told me, he said, your ejection fraction's fine. He was remembering that from, he knew, looking at my charts. Ejection fraction's okay. That's when I asked him, would conditioning affect the ejection fraction? Would that increase the ejection? He said he didn't give me, he said no, not really. But people with heart failure now, heart failure, that ejection fraction starts going way down. That, Jenny, is why your friend would be, that's one of the reasons she would be so tired, fatigued, because her heart was failing, cardiomyopathy. Her heart was, and it wasn't getting enough blood out. The ejection fraction is falling. Like I told you, this cousin of mine, her husband died, the big guy that, Jackie Robinson was his name, like the baseball player. Okay? You know, and I told you that he had smoked, he had gained a lot of weight, etc. He was past 60, well past in his 60s, but he had an ejection fraction of 15%. 15%. The ejection fraction is supposed to be 50 or above, 50% or above. He had a 15%. Well, he couldn't even walk from here to that door without. I mean, he just kind of like that because because the tissue ischemia, lack of blood flow to the tissues. Therefore, translating to lack of oxygen. Therefore, and he died. He really couldn't. His heart he couldn't handle that. All right, but anyway, everybody, there it is right there. Now, stroke volume is the amount of blood ejected by a ventricle. Stroke volume equals milliliters per beat. That's just telling you what stroke volume is. That's milliliters per beat. That's stroke volume. The amount of blood ejected by a ventricle during each systole, which is contraction. 3 factors. Okay, y'all. Here's something else. Now, notice this. This is something you might not have in your book, in your notes. I don't know if I put that in there. Did I, James? Okay, three factors that regulate stroke volume. All right, one of these is the preload. The preload is the amount of stretch on the heart muscle. The heart muscle, y'all, is like a rubber band. The more it is stretched, the more forceful it will do this. Like you take a rubber band. I never forget my dad one time. He was twiddling a rubber band like this one time on his finger. He was just talking something. The rubber band broke. I always think about this, and I'm piddling with a rubber band. The rubber band broke and popped him in the eye. He almost lost his eye. I never will forget that. But anyway, 3 factors that regulate stroke volume. One is preload, the degree of stretch on the heart muscle. All right, the degree of stretch. All right, preload. In other words, Frank Starling's law of the heart says, the more the heart fills during diastole, the greater the force of contraction. That's Frank Starling's law. You have that one? Frank Starling. What?
You're rubber banding at me.
Yeah, watch the rubber band, yeah. All right, I was thinking about that because I have a bunch of old rubber bands in my desk. I'll put these Scantron things, rubber band them. They stay in that desk long, they'd rot. And I took one out the other day, I was going to put it around there, and 9 times out there, I start to stretch them and put them around Scantrons, they go pop, they just pop. And I always think about my dad's scenario when that happens. All right, but anyway, here's Frank Starling law of the heart. We'll talk about this some more in lab. We're going to talk about this in lab when we do blood pressure and so forth. But there it is, preload, and then right contractility is the force of contraction of the individual ventricular muscle fiber. That's contractility. You may not have that, do you? Do you? Okay. That's going to be contractility. This is in your book if you want to glance at it. I'm not going to get into it that much other than just tell you. In other words, that heart muscle, the more it's stretched, the greater will be the force of contraction. If you have cardiomyopathy, though, it ain't going to work very good at all anyway. It's just not going to work. And then afterload, now let me show you this last one. Afterload, the pressure that must be exceeded before ejection of blood from the ventricles can occur. This is afterload. And this afterload figures in congestive heart failure. The afterload, getting enough pressure there to make that heart muscle contract. That's afterload. The pressure that must be exceeded before ejection. And if the heart is real flabby, it doesn't get that pressure that it's supposed to in those ventricles, and that's what happened to my good friend Jackie Robinson. He was a super nice guy. He really was one of the nicest guys you'd ever want to meet. But he had congestive heart failure, and his heart failure was brought on, by the main culprit with him was the cigarette smoking. I'm telling y'all, that is the most preventable cause of death in the United States. Just always remember that. All right, now right here, afterload, the pressure that must be exceeded before ejection can occur. Just kind of keep that in mind. And then I want to mention this to you also. Circulatory shock, that's when the cardiac output is reduced, usually cardiomyopathy or heart failure. This is just common sense right here. This is very common sense. Circulatory shock, when the cardiac output is reduced, our blood volume decreases to a point where the body tissues become hypoxic. Hypoxic is when there's not enough oxygen out there. So that is circulatory shock. And then we talk about disorders. Risk factors, we've already talked about these in lab. The risk factors are in lab. And I list some there: cholesterol, high blood pressure, cigarette smoking, lack of exercise, obesity, diabetes. Now diabetes sometimes is in genetic predisposition. And the one that's one of the most scary ones. See, you can do something about you can't do something about your age. You can't do anything about the sex of the individual, male or female. That's it. You can't do anything about, if my daddy had it like Billy Joe Hart, his dad died of a heart attack before he was right around 50. Early demise from heart disease. That's genetic. If you had coronary artery disease, that's a personal thing, and you've got your deal from lab, so be sure and look at all that stuff. And so right in through here, congestive heart failure results when the heart cannot supply the oxygen demands of the body. I might not have that on your deal. That's congestive heart failure. When the heart cannot supply the oxygen demands of the body. And that's heart failure. And that's probably about, okay, now this just does give you some things right here. Y'all have congestive heart failure. He talks about, if you look at this book right, oh yeah, by the way, this is where that, this is where that came from. Look at this. This is what I printed for you. That's where that came from. And you'll see highlighted in yellow. What does that highlight in yellow say? Could y'all hear her? Smoking, where's in yellow there? Smoking is the most, you hear this book?
No, but I'm doing a report.
Smoking is the most preventable cause of death in the United States. This is on page in this book, on page 416 in this book. You want to borrow my book?